I remember one night so I have sleep paralysis sometimes, you know.
What is that?
Where I have two different versions. It doesn't happen a lot. It used to happen a lot, but it doesn't really happen anymore. That's when you wake up, but you can't move your body.
Huh.
Okay?
Wow.
Or you're asleep and you can feel your body and you can't move it.
Wow.
So like I would be in a dream. I know I'm asleep. I can feel my body there. I'm trying to move. I'm trying to wake myself up, but I can't get out of the
Kind
dream.
of caught between worlds.
Yeah.
Huh.
Or you wake up and you have no control of your body. So you're just there and it's like you're paralyzed. So I had a dream. I had like a dream inside of a dream inside of a dream where I kept waking up and I would have like the sleep paralysis, right? So how it would work for me is like I would be there and I could move something really small, like the tip of my finger, and I'd move it, and then I could move my finger a little bit, then all of a sudden I'm back, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I would get up and I'm like, oh God, that sucked. And then I would look around the room and then I would realize something was different. I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming.
Wow.
And then
But you were like lucid?
yeah, well, no. So I would realize I was dreaming because I would realize, okay, this isn't my bedroom. And then as soon as I realized I was dreaming, I'd wake back up and I'd be paralyzed again.
Wow.
This happened like 6 or 7 times.
Wow.
So I kept waking up. I would go through the sleep paralysis. I would come back, at least what I thought was into my body, and then something would happen that would make me realize I'm still dreaming. The very last one before I woke up, I couldn't move my body, and somebody was standing next to me. And it was a woman. And she was saying something into my ear, and I can't remember because she was whispering it, and she kept saying something. And I'm like, my heart's racing, and I'm like, it was scaring me. And then finally...
Because you couldn't move.
Because I couldn't move. And then I was doing the finger thing. And I started moving my hand a little bit, then bam, I was up. And then I actually woke up for real, and I shot up. My heart was racing. I was sweating. I was like, oh, God, okay, I'm calming down. I'm like, okay, I think I'm really awake now. I think I'm really awake. This is my, like, because it was different.
What a thing to say, though. Like, I think I'm awake.
Yeah.
I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah. So I think I'm awake, and it turns out I was.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it was just a dream. Like, I'm feeling myself. I'm feeling my chest. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm looking around. Okay, I'm in the bedroom. And I feel next to me, and I feel for Astrid. And I feel her laying there. I feel her body. I feel her shoulders. I put my hands on her hip. I'm like, okay, she's there. Okay, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I calm myself down. 10 or 20 seconds goes by. I hear the toilet flush in the bathroom. Astrid walks into the bedroom. So that thing that I just touched
Wasn't Astrid.
and it wasn't there anymore. So I put my hand back and there was nothing there. And I told her that. I'm like, there was just someone
I mean, you
lying.
felt like an ass and like an arm and like a leg or something.
It felt like it was a person there.
Yeah. But it
And-
felt like a woman, like Astrid,
Yeah.
like you thought it was Astrid.
I thought it was Astrid.
Yeah.
And
Who
again,
you were familiar with the touch of.
yeah. And it was just like, it was like out of a horror movie because I felt this person here. And then all of a sudden my wife comes into the bedroom, like who was in the bed next to me? And, you know, and that I was up after that. Like that one got me because the dream of the woman talking in my ear and then waking up and then feeling someone beside me and then it turns out they weren't beside me because when I went back to feel, the bed was flat.
Yeah.
There was nothing there.
It was not a pillow. It was
Right?
not a sheet bunched up. It was
And it was the type of thing that I was up for a little bit before I went to go touch her because I was up. I was like, oh shit, I'm touching myself. I'm breathing. I'm like, okay, calm down. Okay, I'm awake. This is good. I think I'm awake. I think this is real. I'm touching myself. Okay, everything's good. Touching my face. Then I go off to touch her, and so almost 30 seconds, a minute went by before. So I was awake. You know, I was touching myself. I was conscious when I went to go feel that, and there was something there. And then she walked in, and I looked back, and I felt again, and there was nothing there.
Wow.
So that one was like, that was weird. And then, you know, I was up, I couldn't fall back to sleep, you know, and after a while, it didn't really bother me anymore. But it was like that was the only one that was like, oh shit, what the fuck was that, you know? And those are like the big stories.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Have you ever met or had any experience with any mediums?
Supposedly, you know, so-called mediums.
I mean, what are your feelings on that mediumship? And
I don't know.
yeah,
I definitely think
I mean, I can assume that you're like, well, maybe.
maybe, yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think they have abilities, and they,
Certainly.
and they don't, and they typically have mental problems like schizophrenia or something like that, or they got some other kind of psychological disorder. But I have known people, and I have heard stories of people that I trust who've interacted with people, and it was too much of a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, so I definitely think there could be something there, to the extent of which I don't know.
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, like my friend Randy, the guy I was talking about before, the guy who reminds me of Jeff Goldblum, except he's the black witch version.
We were having a previous discussion
yeah.
about that earlier before we hit record.
Before we hit record.
Always press record.
I remember one time, two interesting things happened with him that really was like, okay, this might be real.
And you described him as an eccentric guy.
Very eccentric.
Who seemed to have a very good understanding of himself.
Yeah. So the first time I met him,
even in what, like high school?
Yeah, well, college, freshman year.
Still young guy.
Yeah. So the first time I saw him, he's black, and the first time which doesn't make a difference, but just to give you a picture of the person, kind of short, not really short, a little bit shorter than me, and
really short.
Yeah, really short. The first time I met him, or I saw him on campus, he was wearing like this kind of weird sweater that was loose, of a skirt, a black skirt with like a studded belt, fishnets, and combat boots. This was in Kentucky. He's black, and it's like
sticks out a bit.
He stood out,
yeah.
And I'm like, damn, this dude is fucking fearless. And I had to get to know him.
That's a person who has a very big understanding of themselves if they want to do that.
So I made friends with him, and it turns out he has pagan beliefs, and he's very well educated. I told you before, he was like reading books in Italian on Italian pagan practices just because it was interesting to him. He was learning this stuff. He was really, really well educated. I was he was an interesting guy. There's two really interesting things that happened with him. The first one, his roommate moved out in the dorm. I guess he got too freaked out or something.
Is it gay for pay thing?
Maybe. But actually, well, the funny thing is...
Sorry, I don't mean to make you digress.
That's okay. I digress about my gay for pay. No. So his roommate left, and I remember I went like the day after the guy moved out, and I kept looking at his mattress, and just something felt weird about the roommate's mattress. I'm like, just something felt weird about it.
You were like drawn to it, like you saw something, you felt something strange.
Yeah,
about
something was
the mattress.
Yeah, something was off. So I lifted the mattress. There's a voodoo doll under there that he put there because I guess he didn't like his roommate.
Wow.
So he put that there to kind of
of a Wiccan thing. Yeah,
get him out. He didn't try to harm him or anything. But he's like, why are you looking under there? I guess he obviously didn't remove it yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just looked at the mattress and something fell off. I just felt like I should look under it. He's like, that, and that to him is like, that's really interesting.
He's like, you knew it was there.
Yeah,
or something was there.
You felt something was, and
wow.
so that was like the first time, like, okay, that's weird.
But he was on to he like, interesting that you knew that was there.
Yeah. And the second time, I had a bunch of people over at our apartment. This is after we moved out of the dorms. There was a little wooded park area, and he wanted to do a thing in the woods. Like, okay, I don't care, whatever. So there was about, 7 or 8 of us, and we were all holding hands, and he was like doing some kind of ritual or whatever, and he was doing his thing. And I was drunk. I didn't care. I think I was a little high too. I was like, whatever. And I was holding this girl's hand, and while he was saying this, I had this really, really strong sensation that, I don't know if it was energy or what, but something was flowing from some other part of the group through me into this girl next to me that I was holding her hand to, right? And it was such a strong I didn't say anything.
The sensation is one of electricity, kind of a...
I don't really know.
Force, kind of a
It's
feel?
almost like... It's going to be a weird comparison, but it's almost like when your arm goes completely dead and you start getting blood coming back to it, but before like the pins and needles, you just feel like the blood kind of flowing and it's like it's starting to move through again. That's the closest thing I can compare it to, if that even makes sense to you.
It does, like a force, not an electrical shock, but like a feeling of a movement of force.
There's something flowing distinctly to her because I felt it and I knew it was going to her.
Huh?
And I didn't say anything.
You perceived it as like this is going to her.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about it. But after it was all said and done, Randy was like, "Yeah, I felt." Sorry, I got something on my nose. Randy was like, "Yeah, I felt some energy flowing, and it really felt like it was going to you," and pointed to her. And that was kind of weird because I felt that and I didn't say anything to anybody about it. But after everything was all said and done, he's like, "Yeah, I really felt like something was happening to you, and I'm not sure what it was." But I felt that and it was going to her, and it was such a distinct feeling. Then at the end, he's like, yeah, some energy was going, and it was going straight to you. The next day, she had a miscarriage. She didn't even know she was pregnant. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but she told us about it. She's like, yeah, I didn't even know I was pregnant. And that, that happened. So
were you perceiving her pregnancy maybe?
I don't know. But I know that I felt something, and I know that Randy felt the exact same thing going to the same person.
Wow.
And I hadn't said anything about it. And it's hard to describe because of the experience, but it was very distinct.
Wow.
And the fact that he experienced the same thing. And I think someone else said something too, like on the other side, it's like, yeah, it really felt like something was going to her. But, it was me, Randy, and I think one other person was like, definitely stuck on this went to her, And that was like, okay, that was fucking trippy,
Wow.
So.
Wow. But you've had many experiences of perceiving beyond the physical world, it seems like.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I got some stories.
I mean, you're open to it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open to it, and I know I've experienced stuff. What that stuff is, what it means, I have no idea. And I'm not going to try to make any claims.
Sure.
But I got some cool stories.
I'm not necessarily. I bring up a mediumship and things like that. Are we still good to go?
Yeah.
I bring up mediumship and because I've had experience with one person in particular, and it never really was something that I ever looked towards. Like I didn't go see psychics, and I wasn't ever really fascinated with the idea of mediumship or anything until my dad died. And for some reason, it came into my mind to seek it out. Probably because of the nature of his death. He just was here one day and gone the next.
Yeah.
But even then, it wasn't something that was on my radar. It was just for some reason it was a feeling of being compelled to look for it. But I also needed the right person to even believe it.
Yeah.
And I found this guy. I was just doing a search on the internet, and I found this guy, and he's now kind of famous now, but he wasn't at the time. His name is Mark Anthony. He goes by Mark Anthony. And he is a lawyer by trade.
Interesting.
And he is a medium by birth. So he was selling his services out of his legal firm.
Interesting.
He wasn't practicing didn't have a tarot shop or something like that, He did this kind of on the side to help people. He's become kind of famous now for doing it, and I don't even think he's a lawyer anymore because he's really talented. But I should say gifted. I don't know if it's a talent.
Yeah, well.
It's a gift.
If it's a talent, it's fake.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You can be a talented actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for me, in my mind, lawyer, medium was like someone, there couldn't be two polar opposites.
Yeah.
Someone who deals with the written in stone legalities of very physical human life.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, talks to dead people.
Yeah.
Is like, why would this person make that up? Why would they do this? Why would they invite people into their legal firm to be ridiculed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless it really was legitimate. And the guy's in Melbourne. I'm like, this guy's in Melbourne?
Yeah.
So, of all places. So I went to see him, and it was a fascinating experience.
Yeah.
I could talk for another 20 minutes about it.
Yeah.
But
he told you some things that no one should have been able to know.
Yes. He was very surprised that my dad had only died like a month previous to that. He's like, if I knew that, I wouldn't be doing this right now.
Yeah.
He's like, it's too soon for you. So he said, who am I doing this reading for? And I sat down. My brother was right to my right side, and my wife was to the right of my brother. And I said, well, we're all here together. He's like, well, I have to actually direct it to somebody. He said, the way that I do this is I look at you, and the people come in on your right side are your mother's side of the family. And the people coming on the left side of you are your father's side of the family. I said, okay, well, for me, I guess. You have to pick one. I said, okay. And he said, I like to say this Catholic prayer. He's like, I was a Catholic. I am a Catholic, but it has nothing to do with this. It's just my way of tuning in.
Tuning in, yeah.
And he said, it's interesting because it's like he said, it's like being on a car trip and you listen to a radio station and eventually the radio station starts to fade out. And the further you drive away from the signal and then it dies out, you know. So he's like, it's about an hour and it starts to get less and less and less until it's just like nothing, can't hear anymore. So he says, he looks at me and says, did somebody on your dad's side die of cancer? Like, it looks like they had a really bad bout with cancer. I said, no, I can't think of anybody. On my dad's side, no. And he was like, well, you know, sometimes those things come in and I don't know who they are. Just let it go. We're not going to dwell on it.
Okay.
And then he starts talking about, well, first of all, I should preface this that when I called him to make an appointment, he said, I don't even want to know your last name. He's like, I'm going to write your first name down and your phone number. That's all I want. I was like, don't tell me anything else. Don't tell me nothing about what's going on. So he said, is there a person on your dad's side, feels like your dad's side, who was in like a terrible car accident? I said, no, not a car accident. And he said, well, it kind of feels like they were like here and then like they were gone. Like really sudden, out of the blue. And I said, well, my dad died of a heart attack. And he's like, that kind of makes sense. He says, because the way that he interprets the sentiments and the signals from the other side, as they put it, was the only way I know how to do it, he said, is through my own experience. So when I'm giving a message, it's only through things that I've experienced. Like, for instance, if I hear someone singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, that's not them singing that to you. That's a signal to my understanding, and that's me. I'm going to express what that means to me, and that's going to make sense to you, which is a fascinating way to put it. And he said, and in finding out about a way a person dies, he's like, you can get a single signal like that, like a car. He's like, I can feel it in my chest. He's like, I can feel it right here. He's like, it's all of a sudden, and oh my God, I'm dying, I'm gone. It was like, it was really sudden. And it was like, just transferred over.
Did he say that before you told him about the heart attack?
Yeah, okay. All of that.
Interesting.
He was like, it was like a really bad car wreck. Like, it was a very sudden, like, he didn't suffer. It was just like, wham, dead. And
but he said the thing about like he was holding his chest. That's interesting.
He was feeling it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he's like, I can feel it. He's like, all of a sudden.
Because I mean, that would make sense in a car wreck, because if you got in a car wreck,
you smashed
or the seatbelt across the chest. Yeah. I've seen people who've got like really terrible bruises across their chest from the seatbelt. So yeah, it makes sense. That's where the pressure is.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Because it stops you like that.
Yeah.
And
so him trying to reference it like that.
It was a car wreck. Yeah. I said it was actually a heart attack out of nowhere. Like no signs or anything. And then he was telling us, he was like, yeah, I see somebody flying a kite, and he's running through a meadow. And I think what that means is that he wants to tell you that he doesn't feel any pain anymore, like none. Like he's like joyful, and it feels great to be alive.
Interesting.
Or not alive, but like it feels good to
be wherever he's
to
at.
be without
Yeah.
being 60.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And having the weight of life and the physical ailments that he was dealing with, that he's running, you know, and everything's good, everything's fine, and that he's actually standing between you and your brother. My brother would be like standing to my right, sitting, and he's like, was your dad like a man's man? He was like, would he like hug you? He's like a man's man. I was like, yeah, he totally was. He was that kind of guy. He was expressive, but like in a manly kind of way.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that totally was him. He knew that. And I didn't express anything about him. I'm not saying anything. I'm just listening. I didn't express anything about my dad. He's like, yeah, he was like a man's man, wasn't he? Like, not afraid to show his emotions, but just like, you know, a dude. It's funny because we used to call him the dude. He was the dude. And he said another story he was telling. He's like, do you know these like lemon squares? They're like this kind of a pastry. It's like a lemon square, and you put like confectioner's sugar on it. And I said, kind of. And I don't know. He's like, I'm seeing these lemon squares. And I tell my mom about it later on, and she's like, your grandmother used to make those all the time.
Really?
Yeah. And she's passed. She died of leukemia a long time ago. But he said that she, and there was a couple of other things that connected her to me, but the lemon square thing was the most profound thing later on, because my mom was like, yeah, I mean, she gave me the recipe and her handwriting after that.
Yeah. Interesting.
She's like, yeah, she used to make those. They were delicious. And my grandmother was telling him things about how she said, first of all, Mark says, you're an analytical guy, aren't you? Like, you look at the world very analytically. I was like, yeah, I guess so. He said, your grandmother loves that about you, but you need to stop and smell the roses. Like, don't look for an answer in everything. Holy shit, that's profound. For me at the time, was very much like I look at the world, and I still do. I look for the deeper meanings in things rather than the experience of right here and now. Yeah. And she had that insight that she wanted to express in me. She's like, he said that she's kind of, for lack of a word, a guardian angel in your life. She's been there for a long time, and I was her first grandchild, and she loved me a lot. Okay. So, and passing, it's not surprising to me that she would be a part of my life, and wanting to help guide me through some things. So that was profound. My grandmother, there was another, my dad's grandmother came through. Didn't say anything. She said, "There's this quiet presence. It's coming out of your dad's side. She wants you to know that she's there, but she's not saying anything to me." And I was like, "That's my grandma, Sumi. Like, she loved, and she was very caring, but she didn't have a lot. She didn't, express a lot. She wasn't very outgoing. She wasn't boisterous. She was very reserved." I was like, "That's my grandma." And so at this point, like 3 or 4 people came through, and he's like, "That's that's pretty much it." And it was about an hour into it, and I was like, "That's amazing." And we got to talking about this. I said, "There's one thing that I'm interested in is we didn't hear from my uncle. My uncle, he did a very bad thing. He killed his wife and killed himself. Yeah, out of a rage. Wow. And it was his ex-wife at the time. And when he found out that she was moving on and got another boyfriend and was living a happy existence, his derangement went off the edge, and he ended up shooting her and shooting himself. But I loved my uncle. My uncle was like, he was the young uncle. He was like probably about 10 years younger than my mother, and was just the cool uncle. Yeah. He was the one who showed me like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Oh, okay, yeah. He was the cool guy, but deranged. and I told Mark, I said, "Mark, I had this dream." I said, "I had this dream. I was in a movie theater, and I left the movie to the concession stand. And in the concession area, there was a group of people buying concessions, and one of them was a zombie. It was a walking corpse. But I wasn't afraid of it because I felt the presence of my Uncle John. And I wasn't afraid of my Uncle John, but he looked like a zombie." Yeah. And he ran up to me. He was like, "Oh, Derek, it's so good to see you. I'm so happy to see you." And just, and wanted to express like, "Oh, I wanted to see you, And I woke up because it was jarring. But I remember thinking, I'm not afraid of you because I feel like, like if you close your eyes right now, you can feel who I am in the room. Yeah. And I can feel who you are in the room. There's an essence to it, And he stops dead in his tracks, Mark, the medium. And he goes, shaking his head. He's like, "We got it." He's like, "Give me a second." And he said, in the way that he expressed the way that he perceives things, and that the only way he can get messages is through his own understanding of things, then he imparts them to you. He said, "Somebody came through on your dad's side in the beginning, and he was pushing his way out, like pushing other people out of the way. He was like, this guy's kind of an asshole." And he said, he came in on your dad's side, But what he did was he came in on my brother's dad's side, which was on my left, which was on my right, which was my mother's side.
Okay.
Which was my uncle. But he came in between my brother and I. So it looked like my dad's side, but it was actually my brother's mom's side.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
He said he looked like he had a very terrible battle with cancer. Like he had sunken eyes.
Oh, so that's the guy he was talking about, like the cancer.
He was gaunt, you know. And he said that when a person does a terrible thing and they die and because of that, there are levels of existence on the other side. He went on to tell me this, like the way he understood it. He said there's levels of existence on the other side, and when you do something very bad, you cross over to a very low level, and you have to work your way. The way he described it was out of the darkness and into the light again. And the only way you do that is through time and penance and seeking forgiveness and learning and realizing what you did. And he said that when you're in the dark, you are not perceived as who you were. You're perceived as a terror, as a horror, as a darkness. And for Mark, that dying, rotting away of cancer was his evil, not his evil, but his dark personification. For me, the idea of a corpse, the living dead, is probably like the scariest thing for me. To be alive but dead and not able to die is terrifying to me.
Yeah. Well, you can also think about like that, whatever caused, that incident, that snap or, the psychosis he went into, kind of eating away at your soul.
Sure.
Decomposing your, that in a way. So it's interesting how you had that impression through that dream, and especially if he had that
the long battle with cancer.
Yeah, that idea, because it's kind of similar looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, depending on, again, he can only relate to what he knows. So if he saw him through that way, through like a person with cancer, you saw it through maybe, through the zombie, the walking.
And I was in a movie theater too, so like a movie, zombie movie.
Yeah.
The iconography of that too,
Very interesting.
So he said, "Hold on a second. I'm gonna try to get him again." And he said that he's looking around. He's kind of like getting agitated. He's like, this guy's like up. He's just like, he's got so much to say, and he's kind of talking like this, and he wants to talk. And I was like, this is my Uncle John.
Yeah.
Like, you're explaining my Uncle John to me.
Yeah.
He said, he's saying things like, I know what I did, and I know what I did was wrong, and I have to tell everyone, and you're the last person who will be able to forgive me.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have to tell you and your brother that I know what I did, and it's my fault. I'm sorry, and I know that I had mental illness, and like he was like manic about it. He was like saying all this stuff, and I didn't tell Mark about what he did. I told him I had a dream about my uncle who passed away.
Yeah.
So Mark was like saying the stuff, like manic stuff, and and he even started to personify like the sound of my uncle's voice, not the timbre, but the cadence.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah.
And he was like, he said that he's what, and that's when he went on to explain like what he has to do to raise his consciousness again, to come back into the light. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. Fascinating
stuff. Coda. Cut to, use a movie term. Cut to about 2 weeks after that. I'm at work, and I work with my cousin. He works in a different department, and we worked at a bank. And I told him about this experience that I had, and the dream I had, and the medium, and he goes, do you remember Grandma and Grandpa's trailer? They had a trailer on a lake in Michigan. It was like a summer home. They would we go out to the lake, Grandma and Grandpa's house, who was my Uncle John's parents.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He's like, those screen doors on a trailer, they're kind of flimsy. They like just got like a magnet.
Yeah.
You press them and they fly open. He said, well, I was in Grandma and Grandpa's trailer in a dream. And I knew it was that. And I was like, oh, cool, Grandma and Grandpa's trailer, Nobody was there. And he said, all of a sudden, I heard a knock on the door. And I walked over and I touched the door, and the door flew open. And a demon came in the door with red sunken eyes. He said, but it was Uncle John. I knew it was Uncle John.
Interesting.
And he hugged him and said to Dave like the same things about like, I miss you guys. I'm sorry for what I did.
Was this this was before you
This
saw?
was after that.
After that,
Yeah.
Did he know about your meeting?
I was just telling him about it.
Just telling about it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he said a couple of weeks ago, I had this dream that, you have dreams all the time and just write them off. But he's like, holy shit. Like, I just had this dream
Yeah.
that sounds very similar to the dream you just had. And the experience you just had with this medium is like all tying together.
That's really interesting.
The last time I heard from my uncle was another dream. Mm-hmm. This was a couple years ago. And it was a couple years after that medium event. And I had a dream that I was in Michigan, in Detroit, and it's like November. Mm-hmm. And when it's like, it's muddy and slushy, and it's kind of a little bit of ice. Yeah. But it's not snowing, but it's just shitty.
Cold but wet.
Yeah. And kind of gray.
Yeah.
And it was like that. And it was like a duplex. There was like a truck next door, and there was like mud on the tires. It looked like a shitty place to live. And I didn't know what was going on. So I walked in this house, and I opened the door, and my Uncle John is in there. Mm-hmm. And he's in a human face, the human face that I remember. And he's telling me about all the good things that are going on in his life. I was getting his life back together.
Yeah.
And it felt like a halfway home.
Interesting.
And he's got this clothesline inside his apartment. Mm-hmm. And he's like hanging up his clothes because he doesn't have a dryer. But he couldn't be happier. Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, I really figured a lot out and really just, got my life back together. Things are going really good. I just want to let you know that.
That's good. That's interesting. It's like a midway point.
Yeah. That he was working his way back. It's just so fascinating to me. Yeah. That I had this string of events, and they haven't heard from him. Yeah. Since that. So I've had those experiences that help me at least accept that there's some things that I don't know about, and that
there's a lot of things
create religions to help us realize that we don't know a lot about things. You know what I mean? Or at least deal with the fact that we don't know a lot about things. Yeah. And so they're like, okay, here's exactly what the afterlife is, and you go, okay. Yeah. But is it the truth? I don't know. Not sure about that.
Yeah, it's all up to interpretation. It's all an attempt to try to, because I do think people have things that they consider mystical experiences. I don't know what those are caused from, but there's definitely some interesting phenomena out there. Mm-hmm. Like your situation, stuff I've experienced, or the things you experienced, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if there will be ever way, if it is something, if it isn't just our imaginations or just our hopes getting the better of us or whatever it might be. I don't know if we'll ever be able to, understand it in this kind of realm. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that our brain can never interpret, and when you realize how, even though the brain is the most complex thing we know of, which is kind of weird because it's our brain that knows that.
It's going to think it's the coolest thing on earth.
Yeah. But when you realize how inadequate it is in so many other ways, there's a show on Netflix that, it just talks about like optical illusions and all these different things that your brain just kind of glosses over and how it perceives information.
The brain games or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think it's
my
brain
kids
games,
love that one.
Yeah, brain games. And
the ways you can even trick it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ways that you can trick it. There's just so many things that we can't perceive, that we wouldn't even know that we weren't perceiving them, and it leaves so much room for possibility there. And, it's great to speculate. It's great to think about. It's just like you said, when that speculation turns into something else, religion or, whatever your religion may be, it's your best attempt to help understand these things that we can't really perceive. But when it turns,
but it shuts you off to the possibilities at the same time.
Yeah. It shuts you off to the possibilities, and it also puts you in a position to kind of use that as your own personal shield against the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Anything that you consider to be bad, or you take, or these beliefs that were developed over so many years, and you apply them to situations that aren't really, it's just you being a dick, pretty much. But you're using your religion to justify it because you have some loose interpretation of what it might mean. So I think religion can serve a very good purpose, but it gets out of hand
Sure.
a lot. So
They need to allow and even teach the propensity for abstract thought at the same time. To say that this is a guidepost, it's not the law.
yeah,
This can help you.
it's our best guess.
Exactly.
That's all our life is just our best guess. We're all just blind, stumbling around in the dark porta johns at the porn fest, trying not to get our hands dirty.
Just trying to, not do gay for pay.
Yeah,
But it's a good payday.
it is a good payday. So,
American Music Podcast.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
See you next time.
See you next time.